welcome to PauseCast episode 74. It is the 1st of March, 2018. I am Jessica Alouette, and I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Mark Hanna, I use he, him. Welcome.
Hey!
Hey.
It's been a week. We missed a week, which, sorry, we get busy sometimes. It happens. Believe it or not. You might not believe it with how much I talk about video games.
What, you weren't just busy
That's
playing?
weird.
I couldn't record, I was busy playing video games.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had one incident like that where I just wanted to play something one night. I think maybe that was the case one time.
I think
Other
there was...
times it's just been like...
Was there one time where it was a stream instead of the podcast stream?
I think there was, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I remember that.
I remember about that.
Yeah. Either way, this is PauseCast. It is a weekly show about video games. We are going to talk about a bunch of video games that we've played over the past 2 weeks since we missed last week's episode. Mark, going to kick it off with you. What have you been playing this week?
So I've played a bit more Monster Hunter, but not enough to really hit anything new yet. I know that there is a bit more to get to, but I've gotten to the point where it's about I need to grind a bunch of quests to increase my hunter rank level, and once it reaches a certain threshold, then I'll unlock like the next story objective. Well, it's not really a story objective anymore, but the next main objective, and then that'll again uncap my hunter rank. But I've played a little bit of that. I've played a bit of Diablo 3 with you, starting that new season. We did maybe an hour of that. Again, I've now, by this point, gone to max level with every one of the classes. So this is a matter of, I'll get a different set and try that out, rather than, I haven't played this class before. So nothing hugely new there. But what is new is that I bought Into the Breach when it came out yesterday.
It was a game you were very excited about, eh?
Yeah, it got announced last year with a release date of when it's done. It's the studio that made it, Subset Games, previously made FTL, which was a really good game. It was their first game, I think, which was like spaceship crew management combat game that was, I thought, really well put together. When I bought that game, I couldn't put it down for a while. So I was really looking forward to seeing what they do next. Also, they've got a pixel art sort of style that really appeals to me. Into the Breach is a tactics game. The premise is you are giant mechs fighting giant, kaiju-like insects, and you have to stop them from destroying buildings and stop them from destroying your mechs as well. And the twist on its tactics stuff is that pretty much every action there's no chance to hit stuff, and all of the enemy actions are telegraphed to you exactly what they're going to do a move ahead of time, which turns it into quite a puzzle game. Like I've described before XCOM being a puzzle game, but there was also this really frustrating feeling you could get in XCOM where you had a 95% chance to hit and you miss and you feel cheated. This game doesn't have that. It's much more, you know exactly what everything's going to do. The only thing that's based on chance is sometimes when a building gets attacked, it will resist the damage. And you know what the percentage chance is for that, and it's kind of like, if you rely on it, that's a bad tactic, but sometimes it just helps you out a bit.
Right.
But it's been a lot of fun. I played a bunch of it last night, I played a little bit of it tonight. It's much easier to finish than FTL. I actually don't think I ever managed to finish the final fight of FTL. Whereas I've now finished the final fight of Into the Breach twice. I don't feel like it's super easy or anything, though. It's got a hard difficulty I haven't tried yet. And when you mess up, things go to hell really quick.
So what's the, I guess, fail state? Have you run into that?
Yeah, so you have... Each of your mechs has got a hit point pool that regenerates after each battle. It's a series of battles. And every time a building is damaged, you lose points off what's essentially your global hit points. It's the grid, your power grid hit points. Once that reaches 0, it's game over. And what happens at game over, whether it's from failing or from winning, is you send one of your mech pilots back in time to create a new timeline and try to save the world again. So they will retain their experience and stuff like that. I'm currently trying to take the same person through 3 games because that's an achievement, is have the same pilot through 3 final fights. And I've had them through 2 so far.
Okay.
But it's real good because it means the whole thing is continuous. If you win or you lose, you still continue, and you learn from it either way. Yeah, I've been having a real blast with it. I've unlocked, I think, 4 different sets of mechs. So there's different squads that have a different twist on each of them. Like the first one I unlocked after the default one was all about creating smoke with their attacks, which when there's smoke on a tile, enemies can't attack within it. So if you put smoke on a tile with an enemy that will attack, it'll cancel that attack. And this squad would also deal damage to enemies when they were in smoke. So it was all about that. The one I've been playing with right before the show was all about using acid, and these mechs will damage themselves with their attacks, but they'll also heal every time they kill an enemy. So you try to always deal the killing blows, and acid will let you double your damage. So all the squads have got a take on that, which lets you focus on a strategy. And then once you've unlocked a bunch, you can build a squad from any 3 mechs. So I haven't tried that yet, but that should be interesting later on. But it's really like the way it all fits together. Like, it feels like you're solving a puzzle, like there is a right answer, and if you messed up, you can normally see where you messed up. Once per battle, the game lets you reset a turn, which is like a little mini go back in time thing, which is quite nice, because you see, oh, I really messed that up, I'm going to have one more shot at it and maybe fix it. Although I find most of the time I do that, I end up realizing I actually messed it up a turn ago, and I can just do the best I can this turn. I've had a few times where I make one mistake that just really cascades, and I came really close to just losing the whole campaign from being really well off through the course of one fight. So if you're doing well, you're doing well. If you make a mistake, it can cost you dearly. But I've been having so much fun with it. It's really good. The whole thing fits together really well, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't have a hell of a lot to contribute because I haven't played this. I haven't really beaten FTL either or gotten very far in it.
I played a bunch of it, and I got up to the final fight of FTL a few times. I think I got up to the final phase of it, but the time I got furthest was when I set the internals of the last ship on fire to kill all the crew by sucking out all the oxygen. But it turns out in all other encounters, except ones that were just robotic ships, if you did that, you won. But in this one, it turns out if you kill all the crew, it just gets taken over by AI, so I was screwed at that point. Yeah, I never finished FTL either, but I've played a lot of it. I wonder if Steam can tell me how much I've played of it, actually. FTL, I've played, 30 hours. It's not as much as I thought. But yeah, 30 hours and I never beat it, whereas I played 7 hours of Into the Breach, and I've beaten it twice. Haven't unlocked everything, haven't tried it on hard mode yet, or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm glad that you're having a lot of fun with this. I've heard a lot of good things about it from people who aren't you as well, and I've even heard it is significantly better than FTL, and that like, in and of itself, that is an achievement. So congratulations to that team for getting that game out finally.
Yeah, what have you been playing?
I say finally, but it's not been that long since they announced it. It's been like 6 months, and then they dropped a release date at the beginning of the month.
Yeah, there was quite a gap between FTL and that announcement, and I don't know how much of that time they spent working on this.
Yeah, fair enough. I know there was a few ported versions of FTL that came out over that course of time.
Yeah, when it first came out, it looked like this would work really well on a touch-based device. I know they've brought it to a few of those now, like on a tablet. I haven't actually played on a tablet, but just the way the interface is designed, I'm so sure it would work really well on a tablet.
Yeah.
And you can really see Into the Breach has got us, like, the UI design is quite similar. I'd definitely say it's reminiscent of FTL, which is not surprising at all, really. But but they've both got good interfaces, so it's not a bad thing by any means.
Sweet. All right, shall I move on to what I've been playing?
Yeah, what have you been playing?
So, over the past couple weeks here, I played Diablo 3 with you a little bit and kicked off the season.
Mm-hmm.
I played Overwatch. I got myself up to a new season high before the season ended and almost chanced it on one more game. Didn't want to risk it. And, hey, the choice was either risk it and, maybe it pays off with a positive win ratio for the season, or don't and end with exactly 50-50 and a little bit above where you started.
Right.
The massive losing streak I took at the beginning of the season really hurt me, but I recovered almost 300 points of ranking.
Is 300 points a lot?
So 300 points is a pretty small amount, but it feels like a mountain to climb.
Right.
And it gets me out of the biggest ranking pool in that game, so...
Oh, so you passed the threshold.
Yeah, I have passed the threshold.
Okay, well that's...
I started at this current threshold, dipped back below it because of the losing streak I went on, and various shit happened, and then came back up to that. So, happy with that season's performance, and I'm going to aim a little higher this new season that's just started out.
Nice. I think I say every time you bring this up, but I'm so glad I don't play that game. It sounds so stressful.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. Not as stressful as Rainbow Six Siege, which I've also played a little bit of, but yeah. But it can be a little bit high intensity. I'm working on making it lower intensity for myself.
Is that another competitive multiplayer game?
Rainbow Six Siege?
Yeah.
Yes, it
okay.
is. It's another in that style too. Like you have heroes that have unique abilities and weapons and such.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it's a more I will say realistic military shooter rather than the very stylized cartoony look that Overwatch has.
Yeah, Rainbow Six has been a Tom Clancy franchise, hasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, so they don't tend to go for that cartoony stuff.
No, they don't. They tend to be rooted in a certain level of realism. Realism being the art style, not necessarily their actual specialty here, because let's be honest, the plots of some Tom Clancy games have been buck wild. I'm looking at you, The Division and Ghost Recon Wildlands.
And also, if we're talking about realism,
premises.
Why can no one ever see the 3 glowing lights on the head of Sam Fisher in Splinter Cell?
There it is! Finally, Mark is asking the hard questions. And then there are 3 other games that I've played over the course of the past 2 weeks that I'm going to talk about, I think, a little bit more in detail. Mm-hmm. Assassin's Creed Origins, which is a very good game. Yakuza 0, which is a very good game. And Hitman, which is a very good game. All of these are very good games. I'm going to start with Hitman.
Okay.
Because I kind of want to talk about something that Hitman specializes in, and it does really well in one of the newest campaign levels. So, a few months ago, closer to the beginning of the year, the IO released a Game of the Year edition for 2016's Hitman. No, it would have been closer to the end of 2017. They released a Game of the Year edition for 2016's Hitman. This included a whole new campaign and a few new costumes and such, which you could get it turned out to be a paid upgrade in the end for people who didn't already own that edition and just had the base, because they put a lot of work into this new campaign. So
it's basically an expansion that they just called the Game of the Year edition?
Yeah, it was an expansion that they called the Game of the Year edition, I'm going to be honest.
Are there any AAA games that don't get Game of the Year editions regardless of how well they do?
No. I suppose so.
Like Overwatch
Actually,
and stuff that just... No,
you know what? Ubisoft games don't.
Okay.
Weirdly.
But I mean, Assassin's Creed games come out every year, so if they remade it with Game of the Year, then that wouldn't really make sense.
Not anymore. They're not coming out every year, thank goodness.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, but like those Game of the Year editions, if you're not familiar with these, they'll typically come with they'll come with all of the previous content in the game, usually the season pass content as well. So you're getting what amounts to the complete edition of the game. Yeah, so Hitman's Game of the Year edition included this new campaign. It's called Patient Zero, and it offers 4 reworked versions of the levels in Hitman. They're all completely redone with new AI patterns, new scenarios, new cinematics, new story. So it was a pretty substantial overhaul of all that stuff. And the final level is actually what I want to focus on here. So, in the final level of the Patient Zero campaign, which is called Patient Zero, it's set in a private hospital. And you have found out that this guy, your target, Patient Zero, is planning to infect himself and others with this ultra-lethal virus.
I see a problem with this plan there.
Well, it's not a problem because he's in a death cult, essentially.
I mean, that in itself is a problem.
Yes, that in itself is the problem.
But
here.
go on.
So we have a death cultist.
Okay, cool.
So
I love
the death cultist here. Yeah. Ooh, I don't want to touch on this anymore.
Okay, go on.
This death cultist here, he does successfully infect himself, and he ends up in this hospital. Now, one thing that Hitman has always done really, really well is scale. Hitman levels are known for being expansive and pretty heavily populated. Do you see where this is going yet?
A lot of patience?
A lot of patience. So, in this level, it starts out with just your target being infected with this virus. But he's walking about the level.
Oh, shit.
And you have to eliminate anybody who's infected with the virus because it cannot be spread from this hospital.
Are you immune?
It will cause a pandemic situation. No, you are not immune. I'm going to get to that.
Great.
So, as you start working your way towards your target, you'll see a counter appear. And it's just got 1 infected. And you can see them in your special Batman detective view, your instinct. You can see where they are, and you can see that they've been infected. When they're in your sight lines as well, they'll have a skull above their head.
Okay, so you clearly know who's infected and who's not.
You can clearly tell who has been infected.
That would be really useful if you were a doctor.
Now, as you progress through this level and as time goes on, that number very quickly starts going up.
And I imagine if you let it slide, then it's going to go up faster and faster because there are more people infecting more people, right?
Yeah, eventually it does reach an end point, but like that number will just keep going up, and it does spread like a virus. They've done a very good job of this. It spreads from person to person very, very naturally, and it just feels like this really awful, terrible progression, and like the other side of that awful, terrible progression is you know what comes afterwards, because each of those numbers that you see there is a target that you have to kill. And so as those numbers have gone up, and as the time has gone on, that number is like 50. It's 60 in this massive, massive level, and it just keeps coming. It keeps coming, and so your only option is to just it becomes pick up a gun and start shooting basically everything in sight. And it becomes this really, really cold and brutal, and it's a brilliant use of scale, and it becomes this cold and brutal event. And each time you fire a shot, you're going through the motions. like I said, this is like a really, really effective use of this scale of Hitman in a way that I hadn't seen before, and it was like such an outright shocking thing that they had done with this engine and with this level that like I was taking pause as I was streaming this level, not expecting things to go this bad or that everybody could be infected effectively. It led me to think about like the more like if I was one of these AI characters, like I'm the sole survivor here. What is the situation?
In a normal Hitman level, about how many people will end up dying?
1, 2.
Okay, so this is very different.
This is extremely different. Even in a best case scenario, like you're probably in a best case scenario you can just kill the targets, but that is going to take so much planning to get right. It's going to feel very satisfying when you can do it, but it's
I imagine you'd have to
like
start near them somehow or something as well.
You can't choose a starting point is the thing in this one.
Oh, wow.
All of your options are gone, essentially.
I mean, honestly, do you just have to, like, sprint to them and shoot them and then run away?
It's basically going to have to, like, it's going to have to be know exactly where they're going to be at the start of the level, get in, get out. Like, that's, otherwise, things are going to start to go pear-shaped real quick.
Yeah, because it sounds like if you can't keep a tight rein on those numbers right at the start, they're going to slip completely from your grasp.
And that's what they ended up doing for me. And again, this was like on stream. It was really, really unexpected and wild to experience in real time.
It's a good thing people stop being infectious as soon as they're dead.
Yes. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about that because I wanted to talk about that use of scale and like the act of like making that game feel even more brutal than like it already is as a basic like assassination game. There is brutal things that you can do to individual people, but like when you start using that scale to that effect, that is a whole different impact that game manages to have. It's really quite something. Can you think of any other, like, really clever uses of scale like that? No, or not even like that, because, like, that's scale revolving around violence. Can you think of any other, like, really impressive uses of scale in a video game?
I mean, honestly, the first thing that comes to mind when you say that is some of the really, really, really big final boss monsters that are shown up in Monster Hunter.
Right.
When obviously you're fighting pretty big stuff to start with, but I think, was it 4 Ultimate, the final boss of... Or was it 3 Ultimate? One of the handheld ones. The final boss of high rank, I think it was. The Delamador, which was... I think it's the largest monster I've seen in Monster Hunter. For anyone who's played it, you fight towering monsters all the time. This thing was around the size of the arena that you were fighting in. Like, you had, I think, 3 different points on it you could focus your camera on. Its head was probably about 20 times as big as you, and it was like a long, snake-like creature with little legs. It was enormous. It felt like you were fighting the environment. That, though it wasn't without precedent in Monster Hunter, felt significantly different from most of the previous monsters you'd fought there. That's a switch up in scale, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm looking at this now, actually, and yes, I can confirm that as Monster Hunter 4 that first appeared in, the Delamador.
I just couldn't remember if it was that or not.
It is very impressive in scale.
Mazios as well. Yeah, there have been a few really big ones, like the Laoshan Lung in Monster Hunter Freedom 2 was also huge, although it wasn't the final boss, it was a side monster. But yeah, the Delamador, I think, is the biggest one I've seen. There was also, at the end of Monster Hunter Tri, you fought a monster called the Ciadius, which was, again, much larger than anything you had fought before. That was a really cool fight, actually. All underwater, which was a thing that only happened in Monster Hunter Tri.
Yeah, that underwater fighting was wild.
Yeah, it had a real cool soundtrack to that fight as well, actually. I think it's the only fight soundtrack in Monster Hunter to have any vocals, so it set it apart as well. Yeah, those are the first things that come up when you ask that question about scale. But I wonder what else.
I mean, just in terms of like, I guess world scale, I think one of the first things I would talk about was is going to be Assassin's Creed Origins.
Yeah.
Yeah, that game has a gigantic world scale. It's pretty incredible. And it enables something that I really like about a lot of open world games, and it's the potential for just kind of finding stuff by accident.
Yes.
Like I like to kind of slowly wander through an open world and go kind of explore as much as I can. You know, it's a cool feeling.
Definitely.
And Assassin's Creed Origins really enables that. It even, like, I'm going to reference Skyrim here for a second. You know Skyrim, how it's got the compass and it's got up in there, it's got the little icons of what everything is?
Turning the compass off is one of the first things I did, because I turned it off in Oblivion because I hated it, and then I just knew I wouldn't be able to play Skyrim with it. Because, yeah, it's like a little spoiler thing for everything around you. It's so much more fun when you don't know it's there, and then you find it.
See, I think Assassin's Creed Origins has kind of struck a balance with that. Because everything in the world is labeled with a helpful question mark pointing out, hey, there's a thing here. But it doesn't reveal itself to you until you're there. Right.
Yeah, I remember...
So, like...
Oh, go on.
So, like, locations and stuff that you stumble upon, as soon as you actually, get there, you'll get to this town, and the name of the town will appear, and you'll get a little bit of XP for discovering it, kind of situation.
Yeah.
It's led to some cool stuff, too, like, just incidentally throughout the world. I found this string of ritual murders that happened and tracked it to its source. But, like, as soon as I found the first one, I got a quest for it, right? But it doesn't tell you where all the other things are. You just have to kind of find them. And so as I was wandering through the world and doing my exploration, I eventually found the rest of these sites. And I got 3 of them. And there was 4 total. It's really kind of like, oh, I've gotten so close, I want to go find this last one. But I knew it just wasn't going to happen on its own. And I just, it wasn't going to happen if I forced it. And I had this contemplation, oh, maybe I could go and, use a guide, look this up. I ended up finding it later, a couple days later, I think.
Just by chance again?
Site. Yeah, just by chance again. And it felt so much more satisfying to just find that thing in the world.
Right, instead of following a quest marker in a straight line.
Yeah, or looking it up. If I had looked it up, I feel like I would have ruined that quest for me, because it would have been just la-di-da, going off to this location. I already know what's here and I know what's up.
Yeah.
But the experience of actually finding it felt way better.
Yeah, I can see how features like quest markers and map markers and the compass in Skyrim are they're done to be convenient for the player, but I think a lot of what they do, and mini-maps often do this as well, is that they can take an open world that's full of things to discover and turn it into a different little mini-game. Like, if you're driving in a game with a mini-map, you might just mainly be watching the mini-map instead of the actual game, or Oblivion or Skyrim. I'm saying Oblivion because it's the game I remember with the compass most, because I had it off all the time in Skyrim. You're seeing the marker, you're just heading towards it, rather than looking at the world around you. Maybe it looks like they've put in a little path here, or something like that, or you see there's a person in the distance, you go check that out. It's much more fun, I think, to do that sort of organic discovery, and when there's UI elements that are done for convenience, but they offer that information, it's really hard to ignore it. It's so hard. There are some games where I have a really hard time focusing my attention away from the minimap. I'm really glad that didn't happen in Monster Hunter, mainly because if I watched the minimap instead of the monster, I'd just die, I think. But there are a lot of games with a minimap where it just becomes watch the minimap. I found it a problem, actually, in Final Fantasy X, partly because the camera you have no control over it, and it moves as you move in very set ways that can sometimes make it hard to navigate, but there's always a mini-map showing you exactly where you can go, and you just end up looking at the mini-map a lot of the time when you're moving around. So it's nice when games don't have that sort of stuff, but also don't feel they suffer for the lack of it.
On the flip side of that, I do like it when video games have, particularly, I want to be clear, open world video games, not stuff that's got like a more linear progression. Like, I think I'd be kind of irritated if Tomb Raider, to my recollection, doesn't have a lot of this stuff. It just kind of points you in the right direction using your camera, and you can see it on the map when you go to a separate screen where you're supposed to go, but it's not necessarily in the world. Oh yeah, that's right. No, you can see it in the world if you want, but you have to like activate a special ability and it'll point out where you're supposed to go, but otherwise it's not really there.
Yeah, having the stuff in a separate map screen can be a nice compromise because it means you can go check it, but the information isn't constantly thrown at you. And we've talked before about how games do like in-world navigation really well. I remember I've talked about Far Cry 2, and you've talked about another game that I can't remember which one it was.
Mafia 3.
Mafia 3, that had, like, when you set a waypoint or something, or you have a quest objective, the signposts would be obvious enough that you can tell which direction you need to go in, and that's an in-world indicator.
Yeah, like, Mafia 3 added, like, dynamic signposts on the side that would tell you, oh, this is the way you're supposed to turn, and it looks kind of like it belongs in the world.
Yeah.
But enough, it's enough, it's visually distinct enough that it stands out, but not enough that it takes your eyes off the road and forces you to look at the minimap.
Yeah. Like, I know some games have tried to do that with, like, big, semi-transparent neon arrows on the road and stuff, and it's like, yeah, that works, but it takes you out of the world quite a lot.
Yeah. I mean, like, when we're talking about bigger open worlds, the choice of making the objective visible at all times, if you have control over it, like open world RPGs are kind of a good basis for this. If something's really far off in the distance, even if it's like a named town, having like something on screen to help you track towards it is still helpful, even if it takes you out of the game a little bit. I feel like that is a design choice that I still ultimately like a lot.
Personally, every time I see stuff like that, I first look for a way to remove it.
Yeah, I know that it's not a thing that you're a fan of.
And I mean,
it's a thing that I find helpful when games are of a particular scale, though.
Yeah, often you can set a waypoint and you can see where the town will be on the map because the map just has the town with no label until you reach it.
Yeah. But
it's nice when these things are optional, like I was talking about in Horizon Zero Dawn, how it's got so many optional UI things. Actually, now that I'm not playing so much Monster Hunter, I should get the DLC for that at some point. Because I've been looking forward to that as well.
The Frozen Wilds, right?
Yeah.
I do want to go back to Horizon at some point. I think my next game after I beat either Yakuza or Assassin's Creed is probably going to be Persona, though.
Which Persona?
Persona 5.
Have you not finished
the one that? No, I barely even got it started.
That's right. Sorry, I kept getting myself confused as to which Persona game that you've played a lot of.
Persona 4 is the one I played a lot of and then fell off of after the Naoto reveal and how poorly he was treated by the writing in that game. That was back several episodes ago.
Several episodes. Yes.
Several episodes. I'll find which episode it was and link to it in the show notes. But we had a discussion about kind of the transphobia that was present in Persona 4. Because it's obvious and it's out there, and Atlas has a problem with queer people.
I hope there's no more of that in Persona 5 for you to run into.
Apparently there is, 5 minutes, kind of tops situation, and it's not as egregious as having a main character be continuously misgendered.
I mean, that sounds less worse, but...
It's less worse. It's not perfect, but I will take imperfect and improved over whatever Persona 4 was.
Fair enough.
That was like, I think a lot of what the Persona 4 issue was for me is that it hit pretty close to home. So it just made it hard to deal with.
Fair enough.
All right. I actually want to talk about something else that I had a discussion about on this show ages ago.
Cool, let's
go. Do you remember back ages ago when I talked about this? Like, I talked about an idea of curling up by the fireside and playing like a really good video game, like specifically in reference to the kind of like computer RPGs of old, like Baldur's Gate.
Yeah,
it was a lot of text.
Yeah. No, I do remember that discussion.
I think I found a game that has slotted into that for me.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's Yakuza 0.
Really?
Yeah. That game is, for those who are not familiar with the Yakuza series, Yakuza is a Japanese crime drama in a video game. It's entirely voiced in Japanese, which does actually mean that everything is subtitled. Even if I were just listening to the voices and hearing all these scenes acted out, I still have to do a significant amount of reading.
Right, so, I assumed it would have been dubbed. Okay.
No, apparently the first game was, and I remember that it has a kind of buck wild cast. And I'm gonna go look that up real quick just to okay, yeah, Mark Hamill.
What?
Is one of the Mark Hamill is in Yakuza, the English dub of the original game, which was on PlayStation 2. He's like your main rival in that series, Goro Majima. Yeah.
I completely had my mind blown when I first found out that he was the Joker as well as Luke Skywalker.
There's a few other names I do not recognize in here, but I remembered Mark Hamill at least. That's kind of all I can do here. But yeah, Yakuza 0's got a lot to read. It's not dubbed, and you do have to. Again, yeah, you're going to be reading a lot if you play that game, and so it's fallen into that slot of it's like my quote unquote fireside game. And there's a pretty consistent way I've played it. I played it late. I played it while the room was kind of dimly lit. It was right before I go to bed. And it's just a lot of reading for me. And, it's this really cool role for that game to have kind of found itself in. Because Yakuza 0 has been a lot of fun to play, and it allows me to unwind. Even within the context and confines of the game, there's ways for the protagonist to unwind. There's mini games, there's like pool, there's darts. There's all this kind of like fun stuff that's ticked off to the side. So if you wanted to do that a little bit before bed, you totally can. And then you can sink into this really, really wild drama as well.
Right, so it's not just a series of fights punctuated with cutscenes.
No, it's not. There's a lot more to it. Even within the like cinematics, it's not just I'm here to fight this bad guy kind of situation. There's a lot of personal dramas going on. There is the main conflict that's going on, which is surrounding a particularly valuable piece of property that the Yakuza are trying to secure.
Okay.
It's got some fights though.
Yeah,
the fights are fun.
I didn't mean that in a derogatory sense. Just in that a lot of games have the main gameplay focus on fighting, and so they tend to be interspersed between fighting and cutscenes. Like in the Uncharted games, you've got your puzzles, you've got your fighting, and you've got your cutscenes, and that's mostly it. So you like cycle through those three. So it's nice to hear that it has more than just cutscenes and fighting. There's other stuff you can do. That's That sounds
If
nice
anything,
and chill,
like
actually.
the fighting is the filler. Like you run into groups on the street as you're kind of wandering through town, and like they'll want to fight you for X reason.
Yeah.
And you'll beat them up, and it'll be a quick 30-second thing, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Even the boss fights are like, oh, it's a quick, like, maybe 5-minute kind of thing.
Actually, I haven't asked about the combat. Is it like, are you shooting? Is it like punch kick? What's the
Punch kick?
It tend to be like? Okay.
It's like a little bit like Sleeping Dogs.
Yeah, I was
a
wondering
little
if
bit
it
more
might be.
melee focused.
Cool.
You can get weapons and such. But it's a lot of punching and kicking, and you have different fighting styles that you acquire over the course of the game
That's neat.
that you can swap between at will. You can put upgrades into those fighting styles. You can get various weapons. Like I said, those are kind of separate from the fighting style. You'll just kind of like, oh, I want to use a sword for this fight because I'm really struggling with this group here. So you'll switch to a sword fighting style for a second, and then as soon as it breaks, because all your weapons have limited durability,
Right.
you'll be back to your fighting style of choice.
Cool.
Yeah. But it ends up feeling like the fighting is kind of the filler stuff there. Like I said, everything else is focused on, again, that story, that drama, and all the stuff that you can do within the world.
So is it fairly dialogue heavy?
Very dialogue heavy. I'd estimate like probably about half of that game, maybe more, you're going to be spending reading dialogue because, again, all of this is in Japanese. So even if you were just kind of watching all the scenes play out, and most of them are fully voice acted, by the way, there's more that are fully voiced than not, which is really, really cool.
Presumably it's only like side conversations that are not voice as well.
Yeah, there's a few main conversations that aren't as well. And they're just left with like, little flavor
barks,
voice
yeah.
acting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then otherwise it's just text that you're reading,
Mm-hmm.
which is totally understandable. It's a lot of work to be putting into these performances and such. Strikes a really good tonal balance. I really like this game.
Nice.
I'm excited to put more time into the rest of the series, most of which I've owned, and like I've just been like putting it off and looking for a good entry point, and Yakuza 0 being a prequel is a pretty good entry point.
That makes sense. How much time do you think you've got left in Yakuza 0 before you finish the story?
Not sure. I am up to chapter 10 now. There is 16, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay, so about that
8
far
focusing on each of its 2 characters.
Ah, so have you just started using the second character?
No. It alternates 2-2-2-2
Okay.
so far. So you'll spend 2 chapters playing as Kazuma Kiryu.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of the main protagonist of most of the rest of the series.
Okay, so he lives.
He lives. He's telling, like, he's got his own personal story that he's telling. He's got the that situation with the empty lot, which ends up building a lot of his story in the later series, because the events that happen surrounding this kind of come to define him. He's framed for murder, kicked out of the Yakuza, or excuses himself from the Yakuza, I guess. Fights a lot of the upper management, establishes a rivalry with the other character that you play as, Goro Majima.
Wait, that's the one. Is that the one that Mark Hamill voices?
Yes, in Yakuza, in the original version of Yakuza.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he lives also.
Yeah.
Both of these protagonists are going to live to see another day.
There
is also there's a fun system in the remaster of Yakuza 0, or sorry, remaster of Yakuza 1 that came out fairly recently, which is called Majima Everywhere. Majima can appear from various locations in the world and start a fight with you at random.
So what a Majima?
Like he can.
Was that one of the names?
It just it's one of the characters' names.
Sorry.
All good. He can pop up from manhole covers and such just as you're walking down the street and just appear and start a fight with you.
It's interesting that you said one of the characters is framed for murder. Does that mean that there isn't a whole truckload of death in this game like a lot of other games have? Just, yeah, you mow down thousands of people or whatever in Uncharted or whatever.
Yeah, no, there definitely isn't. Like, even the people you fight in the streets and such, you see them after the fight and they look beat up, and they're just kind of there, and they're like, holy shit, this dude's not human. What the hell?
That's...
I think there's been maybe 2 whole murders throughout this whole game so far.
That's honestly really refreshing.
Yeah, it is a lot of drama focus, rather than, like, ultra-violence focused, I guess. There's a lot of, like, I guess, gang-related activities that are going on.
It's mainly I'm interested to hear that they haven't done that very common video game thing of having a lot of essentially faceless people that are just there to die. It's such a common thing, and it's really refreshing to hear that they haven't done that.
Yeah, it is not a lot of that. It is a bit of a refresher. I imagine that other games in the series kind of follow the same trend. But yeah, like there's not a whole lot of death going on in this game.
Cool. It's something I've tried to stay away from in the D&D campaign I run, because I know in a lot of campaigns it's really easy to throw a bunch of enemies at them, and you know that the party is almost certainly going to win the fight, and that probably means all the enemies dying. So if you send a bunch of people at them, then that means that the party's killed a whole bunch of people, and it's often ignored, kind of glossed over, that, yeah, I've killed hundreds of people, so what? So I've, for the most part, tried to, when on the odd occasion they fight people, try to make it mean something, and I'm glad that my players have bought into that. And typically in combat, it will be against aspects of the world that are dangerous, creatures and such, rather than people. And yeah, it's something I've strayed away from because, like the Dr. Bitten says in the comments, Uncharted, like, you kill so many people and it's never addressed. You've talked before about how they had that achievement, ludonarrative dissonance, where it's just like, you go into a cutscene and suddenly pointing a gun at you matters, whereas you've been shot at thousands of times and killed hundreds of people outside cutscenes. Just doesn't make sense and is never addressed.
Yeah. Yeah, the story that is told in the cinematics of Uncharted and the story that is told in the gameplay of Uncharted it's the difference between, oh, this is a game about a mass murderer and this is a game about a peckish? No, wrong word. Something rogue. What is the word I'm looking for?
Sorry, you've dropped out for me just now.
God damn it.
Okay,
what is the word? Yeah, I'm back. What is the word?
I don't know.
Pluckish? Is it pluckish? Plucky?
Oh, plucky rogue?
No. Plucky rogue. That's basically what that is.
There is a moment at the very end of Uncharted 4 that I would not like to spoil, but is essentially a commentary on that, I think. And I had a good laugh at that point. Anyone who's finished Uncharted 4, I think, will probably know what moment I'm referring to right at the end of it.
That reminds me, I need to play the Lost Legacy at some point soon.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Apparently the word of the Dr. Mittens has found the word I'm looking for. Rakish. Having or displaying a dashing, jaunty, or slightly disreputable quality or appearance. That works. Rakish rogue. It's got a little bit of alliteration there, too. That's nice.
She just had another moment of scale come to me.
Oh.
Where it was when playing The Witcher 3, which I still haven't finished. I haven't got returned to. But the tutorial area, or like the opening chapter area, is fairly large. And it's easy to sort of get the initial impression that the game might be a series of those areas.
Which The Witcher 2 was, I want to be clear about that.
Right. So if you played that, you might be even more amped up to think that. But then once you leave it and go to the main area and it's like 20 times as big, I started looking at the map and I just could hardly believe it. Like, it's a really big map and it's all one single space as well. It's like through a bunch of loading zones to go. That was a nice bit. Was like, wow, this game is bigger than I thought. That game is intimidatingly large, honestly. I think I'd be more likely to return to it if it weren't so large.
My dude, you've got to see the map for Assassin's Creed Origins. It is buck wild.
Oh, I have actually. My brother's got it and he showed me the map earlier this year. It's pretty big. Yeah,
even like when you see the opening reveal of the town, like the first town in that game, you're like, wow, this is kind of big. There's a lot going on here, and there's like a lake off in the distance, and there's some mountains surrounding the whole thing. And then you leave and go into like several even larger areas after, the first hour of that game.
Mm-hmm.
And that reveal of the scale of the world there is so wild. Like, I love that we've reached this point where games can become this big, but it also, like, we also have to consider, like, hey, maybe these games being this big and taking, hundreds of hours to play through completely isn't a good thing. It's a really good thing if you are a more, I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is. But if you don't have a lot of money to spend on games but want to get the most out of them, maybe efficient. If you're a very efficient gamer and you want to spend the least amount of money and get the most out of a game, stuff like Assassin's Creed Origins and stuff that has this huge scale and has hundreds of hours of things to do, that's pretty valuable because it means you can have a game that you can play for months and months on end.
Yeah.
And, you pay one $60 fee.
I think games being that large would be less intimidating if we also hadn't been trained by so many games to be completionists. Or like all the games that'll give you like a rating at the end of the mission or something, you want to go back and try and get an A rating, or they've got like an achievable number of collectibles that isn't just for achievement hunters to get. And they've trained us want to try to do everything. Or games where you're supposed to do every side quest, because it's not that hard to do every side quest. They train you to want to do everything, and you get a game like The Witcher 3, and I'm just like, how? I can't do all of this. And it's hard to let go and just be like, I don't need to do that bit. And I mean, one of the difficulties I have with Witcher 3 as well is I feel like if I don't do this content now when I'm the right level for it, I can't come back later because it'll just be super easy to do any of the stuff that will depend on my level, like if there's any combat.
Yeah. Which, like, some games have a smart solution to, like Assassin's Creed Origins' solution to that problem is you can optionally turn on an auto level system that'll scale up any enemies to your level. It won't scale the quest rewards or anything like that, but like it'll at least make combat a challenge if you're not looking to just walk in and waltz all over some old quests that you've just like happened to come back into the area for.
That's really nice. I have noticed a bunch of games will just, the higher levels can end up with spongy enemies and that's about it. They just take longer to kill, and sometimes that is frustrating. It's annoyed me a lot in Elder Scrolls and Fallout games more than anything. I've talked before about how well I thought Horizon Zero Dawn did this, where as you level, you never feel overpowered. You just have, like, you get more powerful, but not ridiculously so over all the low level stuff. So that's a game where I never really worried about, if I don't do this now, I can't come back, because I felt like I could. And I still, in hindsight, feel justified in that. So I still want to see more games follow suit in that, because I thought they did it so well. I'm really looking forward to buying that DLC now. The more I think about it.
Then you get more Horizon, and like that that seems to be a really good thing for you.
Definitely. The main thing is, now that I've got my own PlayStation 4, I just need to figure out how to get all my save data from the one downstairs into my own one. So
I
don't
will
have to
help
worry
you with
about
that after the show.
Oh, thanks. I'm sure it
No
won't be
worries.
I'm sure it won't be super complicated. I just haven't done anything yet.
No, it's not, and it's not super complicated to get your saves across. Thankfully, like it's not as easy as like Steam, where it does it automatically for you, but you know it's pretty okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about this week?
It did cross my mind actually that the enemies in Into the Breach, they're very much guilt-free enemies in the way we were discussing a couple of episodes ago.
Oh yeah.
They're just...
That was last episode even.
Oh yeah, sorry, a couple of weeks ago.
Because we missed a week.
Yeah. They're just giant insects that want to destroy things. And one really nice aspect of it, we've talked before about how games give you certain ways to interact with the world, and often it's shooting things with a gun, and that's about the only thing you can do.
Sure.
And it might sound like using giant mechs to fight enemies is just, yeah, you're shooting and punching things. But two of the other things, the two other things you do, but important things, one is moving them around, which makes it feel really good when you get them to hit each other. That's really nice. But also is blocking their shots with your mechs to defend the buildings. And it's really nice to have one of the main ways you interact with the world be about defending things. I don't know, I just feel like that's a nice thing to add to the whole of it instead of only having offensive abilities. That was really nice. And there are some abilities that are aimed on adding shields to things so they can absorb damage as well, which is quite cool. But yeah, there's no complexity to the enemies. You never feel bad about bashing some giant insect's head in because it was going to destroy a building filled with hundreds of people.
No, it's hard to it'd be hard to feel bad for them and for like kaiju in Pacific Rim or like Godzilla or something. Like it's hard to be sympathetic with Godzilla.
Yeah. Well, but honestly, I'm more sympathetic with Godzilla because there's a whole story of like, oh yeah, it's kind of like the radiation from humans turned it into this thing. That's kind of mean. Whereas these things are just like, no, they're kind of mindless things probably from space that just want to kill shit. I don't mind about
Sympathetic
everything.
to Godzilla, name of the episode.
Not like hugely, like I still want it out of the city. But
there's enough sympathy there. Come on.
Yeah.
All right. I think that is going to do it for this week on PauseCast.
Well,
thank you very much.
Before we finish.
I've done this. I did the thing again.
What are you looking forward to playing this week?
I am looking forward to spending more time with Assassin's Creed Origins and Yakuza 0.
Nice.
How about you? What are you looking forward to playing this week?
I really want to unlock more of the squads in Into the Breach. All the ones I've played so far have had a really neat twist, often relying on a different status effect or something, and it's nice to see how they all fit together. And then once I've got a bunch, I can start mixing and matching them. I don't know, I definitely want to play more of that.
You know what I might recommend for you? Another game that you might like. It's pretty systems-driven roguelike by the name of Heat Signature. Have you heard of this game?
I have heard of that game. Let me just drop my memory with a Google.
I think you should check that out, maybe. It sounds like something that might also be up your alley.
Yes, this is the one my flatmate's been playing. It does look cool. I have contemplated it sometimes, but I haven't actually played it.
There you go. All right. For real now, that is going to do it. Thank you very much for listening to this 74th episode of PauseCast. If you liked what you heard and would like to support us, we got a couple of ways you can do that. First way you can do is rate or review us on your platform of choice. Wherever you're listening, you can probably rate or review the show, and every time you do it, it helps with our visibility. And it makes us and you feel good. Another way you can help us is by supporting us directly and financially on Patreon. Pledging even $1 a month is a huge help, helps us pay for our hosting fees, among other things. And you'll get shoutouts every week on the show, and you'll get access to exclusive Discord roles as well on discord.bird.school if you are interested. Thank you very much to all of our supporters. Sammy, Mary, Para, Allodrain, Noah Holmes, Cory Bat, Rezidoke, Ash Yee, Lemonade Moth, and PD for their continued support of the show.
Thank you. Gosh, that list's so long.
It's really nice it's really nice that we have this much support.
Yeah.
So again, thank you very much for your support of the show every month. And again, that is patreon.com/PauseCast show if you'd like to support us financially. You can find us in a few more places that I'm going to mention for the first time here. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Google Play. We are everywhere now. It's great. And as well, we're on our usual iTunes and such. Mark, you can be found online. Where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at HonestUniverse, and I write a blog as well that's not about video games at honestuniverse.com. How about you?
You can find me on Twitter at bird.school. You can also find me streaming either at live.bird.school or at maximumgun.org. Still got that domain. Let's see. Oh yeah, you can find PauseCast on Twitter at PauseCast Show. And if you have questions any week, you can feel free to email us, pausecastshow@gmail.com. Thank you to Leon for the use of our theme song, Honey Milk Island. You can find Leon's music and download some of it for free at soundcloud.com/LEYAWN. Alright, and that is going to do it for us this week. Thank you very much again for listening, and see you next week. Bird up!
Bye.